Welcome to the B Sound podcast, where we discuss our challenges and successes in the creative realm with creative people. Today we have Gary Lee Conner. Gary Lee Conner, thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Would you mind telling us a little about yourself, like who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Gary Lee Conner, and right now I don't do. I sit at home and don't do much. I once in an hour record music, but I used to a long time ago be in the Screaming Trees.
Awesome.
And started in way back in about 1985, and did that for about 15 years, and had quite a bit of success. I mean, way more than I ever thought we would. You know, we did a lot of stuff I never dreamed we ever would, and and now we're sort of like actually part of. It's weird, but the Screaming Trees being part of like rock history is really strange. I mean, I've realized that over the last few years, like especially being on Facebook a lot, that the whole Seattle scene and all that's like, it's like, that's like rock history, just like, like the London scene was like in the 60s or something like that. It's really strange and surreal. But on the other hand, everything after 1991 was pretty much strange and surreal, music-wise anyway. So, so that's, nowadays I live in Texas, and I've lived here for about 20 years, middle of Texas, West Texas, and San Angelo, Texas. And I just have a family. My daughter's grown up now. She's like 23, so I don't have that to do anymore. But I do record music still, and do it all on my own, like at home on my computer, and release it on the internet, and got a few vinyl records out and stuff like that. So for fun, which is the way it should be. It's not the job anymore like it used to be for a while. When it was a job was when it really sucked.
Yeah, I heard you mention that on a different podcast you were doing about how you don't want it to become a job.
No.
And it became a job for you? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, it did, because, the Screaming Trees were on SST, indie label for several years. And that was what we wanted to do, be a real band. And we were on this like really cool, label. And we toured the US and toured Europe. And that was like my dream come true, being in a real band and doing all that stuff and putting out records and stuff. And then, at some point, it was actually before anything, the grunge scene hit, a lot of bands were getting signed in the early 90s, and we tried to get signed to Epic, or just trying to get signed to a label, and Epic was the label we got signed to in about 1990. And then what happened was gradually, it was kind of like, well, geez, one of the reasons we did it is because maybe we could actually make a living on this, I never even considered that the first few years of the band, but suddenly it's like, well, we're going to be doing this full time. So maybe we'll actually make some money at it, which was chasing the carrot, horse. Yeah. Horse with the stick and the carrot for about 10 years. And we managed to it was always a fight to get any money to live on. So, and but yeah, at some point there, it definitely especially the mid 90s after Sweet Oblivion came out, our record that was most successful in 1992. The songwriting had really changed. And what happened, in the early days, it was just I was doing basically what I do now. I sat around and wrote songs for fun, and then we happened to happen along the band, and I kept doing it, and we'd use them, make records out of them and stuff. But then, after Sweet Oblivion came out, we spent close to a year on tour and didn't have time to sit around and write songs. And I remember I did have a 4-track I took on tour and stuff, but it wasn't the same. I wasn't sitting around writing songs, and the inspiration didn't come the same way. So finally, after we finished that record and we tried to do another one, we didn't have many songs, and it just didn't work out. We tried to record another record, but didn't really like what it turned out. This was in late 1993. Mm-hmm. And then for the 2 years after that, before we finished the Dust album in 1996, I was basically sitting around every day having to write songs, have Lanegan call me up, or a singer, and say, "What are you doing? Are you writing songs?" That's what he'd mean. Or, "What are you doing? Are you writing songs right now?" And couple hundred songs probably, most of which were probably complete garbage because there was just like, but you know, there was a lot of really good ones too. But when you're writing hundreds of songs and you have to do it, that's where the job part came in. It's like, you know, especially like the being on tour and all that stuff, that wasn't really the job. It was like the songwriting becoming the job, which was the whole inspiration part of it. You know, it just like was not fun anymore at all. And, you know, writing it, luckily that only lasted a couple of years that way, and it didn't really have to. But at the time, it was just the darkest, most horrible time when you're like, the thing you love to do becomes a job that you have to do. And when, especially when songwriting and you have to be inspired somehow to write a song, or just, you know, or if you just don't care about it, sometimes it'll just come along. But you know, it's like getting up in the morning and, okay, I was trying to write another song. What am I going to do? Searching for something. And no, we managed to, you know, we managed to do a really good record and had a lot of really good songs. But, you know, that was out of hundreds. I don't know, at least 100 or 200 songs probably came during that period between me and Van. Lanegan didn't get very involved in the songwriting on Dust because he was having some other like personal drug type problems.
Sure.
Yeah, but you know, like it was like, and the thing when we found our most success on Sweet Oblivion was when we'd actually written songs together, because up until that time, most of the songs, with the exception of a few things here and there, were songs I'd written that I give to Lanegan, and he'll work on, you know, either change all the lyrics or none of the lyrics, depending on how he likes it or doesn't like it, you know. Mm-hmm. He liked it enough to actually record it. That was good. And like sometimes the lyrics would be like, you know, not too psychedelic or just not, you know, not quite there.
Yeah.
So because I was always into the psychedelic stuff and nobody else was, especially Mark, you know. So even though all our early stuff is pretty psychedelic because I wrote all the songs, but yeah, so that kind of we moved away from that just mostly because we were all writing together on Sweet Oblivion. We got together in the same room and would actually, you know, throw ideas off of each other and write the songs together. And we even practiced the stuff together. After Barrett got in the band, after Mark Pickerel, our first drummer, quit the band in 1990, right when we were recording our first major label record, Uncle Anesthesia. And so after he left the band, we had a couple different drummers. Sean Hollister was a guy from Ellensburg, was a friend of ours who played drums with us for a while. And then Dan Peters from Mudhoney played with us for about, not quite a year, but he was still, we would have had him permanently, except for, you know, he was still a Mudhoney. And at the time they weren't doing much, but, you know, we told him like either go with Mudhoney or us. And he chose Mudhoney, which was like, you know, we can't like fault him for that. So, so Barrett just kind of came along. We were just looking for a new drummer. Somebody suggested him, and we always just kind of let everything happen. We didn't really how we tried out, you know. So yeah. But it was pretty obvious right at first that he would. The new direction we were going in, like the first song we played with him was Shadow of the Season, which was quite a bit different because with Dan Peters, we had him play because we were kind of working on the record sort of like before Barrett got in the band. You know, we had a few songs and that was one of them. And Dan played it. He's kind of like, this is weird. Like, I can't quite play this right, you know, because it was a little more kind of straight rock or something like that. I don't know what it was about it, but that wasn't quite the kind of thing that Dan got. But Barrett like picked up right away, except for he started hitting the China crash, those sizzle cymbals. We had, no, don't do that. Dude, like, don't use those cymbals. Other than that, though, he got it right away, and you know, and he ended up being, you know, I think he expanded our sound some because he was a different kind of drummer than Mark Pickerel. Mark Pickerel was more like Keith Moon, and Barrett was more like Bonham, you know, like John Bonham or something. So,
oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, so we did all this stuff together. We rehearsed the songs, which was a new thing, because usually before we'd be lucky, maybe we would rehearse them once or twice, or maybe we just give Mark Pickerel a demo tape and say, go to the studio, now learn the song and like go record it. A lot of the early songs were done that way, and we never rehearsed them, you know. But suddenly, you know, after touring and stuff and Mark really getting into doing dope and everything, it was a different thing where Mark was just kind of like, we have to do this, blah, 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 but I'm going to like sit in my apartment and not talk to you guys at all ever, except to have you bring me a tape. Because that's what usually, like a day in 1994, 95, my life consisted of. For one thing, I just got married like in 1993 with my wife, Janet, I'm still married to. And she lived in New York, and we'd been seeing each other back and forth. And I was going to, spend a lot more time in New York and eventually move out there. But I was, the Lanegan was like, you have to stay out here, Bubba. So I had rented a house. It was kind of like a house with the bottom floor. It was an apartment, and the top floor was another room in Ballard, and stayed there for most of those 2 years. My wife would come out in the summer, but she had to work. She's a college professor, so she wouldn't be there. So I'd be by myself in the house writing songs, wake up in the morning, Lanegan, what are you doing? Then I'd have to spend all day writing the song. Maybe like midnight or something, he'd call again. What's going on? And I'd be like, okay, I got a song done. Hopefully, if I didn't, he'd be like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Hang up. Then I had to drive my crappy Chrysler LeBaron across Seattle. Luckily, it was the middle of the night, so there wasn't that much traffic. And take the tape to him, and he'd stick his hand out the door and take the tape. And that was that's all I saw, his hand, probably. I don't know. And sometimes I'd have to take him food, too. I don't think I hardly ever went in his apartment. But, the next day, he'd call, and it was either like, oh, this song's really good, which very rarely happened, or it was like, what are you doing again? He wouldn't even say anything about the song. So it's like, and when when you're trying to do it, and you got, when you get the positive feedback, it's kind of like, but you don't even get negative feedback. It's like no feedback or positive feedback. Yeah, so that happened for about 2 years, 1994 and 95, until we finally got it together and managed to get to the studio, went down to LA with George Jakulius and recorded the record. That went a lot better. That was much more fun. But yeah, the part with the job was really that 2 years of writing songs. It was like, just let's move on, do something, and unfortunately what happened in those 2 or 3 years is the kind of, the grunge and Seattle stuff kind of calmed down, and they were looking for the next new thing. And by 1996, when we got the Dust album out, we did Lollapalooza and stuff like that. It wasn't really the same thing, Maybe if we put out the record that we tried to record in 1993, it would have been huge, you don't know. I mean, we just thought it wasn't nearly, good enough to release. But
I see. I do remember reading, I don't know if it was like Spin or Rolling Stone or something, and they did an interview with you guys, and it was like, you guys mentioned you had a record done, and it was like, but not good enough.
Yeah, it had there was a couple of the songs, like the one, let's see, I think Dying Days we had that song for that record. It was a slight, I put out on YouTube, an old version of it on my YouTube page. I do that with some unreleased and different versions of stuff. But it just, and it was, that was one of the songs were okay. They just, part of the problem was that Mark was really getting deep into drugs. And we didn't, he was the leader of the band. I mean, everything, what he said went, and that was when somebody who's supposed to be telling you what to do doesn't quite even know what to do themselves. It sort of makes it much more difficult,
Speaking of that Dying Days, I've listened to it quite a bit, actually, the one you put up on YouTube. I like it a lot, but I do think it's one of those things that the song benefited from waiting a little bit. The lyrics got a little tighter maybe, and
yeah, the lyrics got changed some, which I thought, in the middle of that, I wrote that song in the fall of 1993, and Mark took it, and in the meantime, and he didn't do that much with it. He didn't do that much with it the second, by the time it got to Dust. He changed some of the lyrics, but the ones he did were really good. And this is the thing, he can change just a few lyrics in the song. He's a really great editor and make it mean something completely different. And in the meantime, Kurt Cobain died, and I always thought that he must have been somewhat, I never talked to him about it, but inspired somewhat to do that, because it really kind of has a vibe of that it's about all the people we knew in Seattle dying, and especially because I think he put in the part, the ghost town used to be my city. I remember that was one of his lines, and I thought, man, that really takes that to another level. And then with the production and stuff. And the production on Dust was really something we were really loved, because we'd always wanted to do like a classic rock album, you know, like that had, you know, like full on like keyboards and stuff. And we had keyboards in some of the early days, but you know, like a, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of whose record, like a Led Zeppelin record or something like that. Maybe not Led Zeppelin, but something like that. And Draculius was the right guy to do that. With, you know, he'd done the Black Crowes records and Jayhawks and stuff like that, in that same kind of vein. And he took it to another level too. It was like, we have these songs we finally thought were really good, and got him on board as producer. And then he brought in some things like bringing them, like Ben Montench, the guy from the Tom Petty and Heartbreakers, to do keyboards. That was like quite a move, because it like really added a lot to the record. And he did stuff like, Untitled Days is actually a high school choir. And, you know, you think, oh, it's really stupid, but it turned out great, you know. And it's like, yeah, probably that's one of my favorite records we did, I think, just because it was so hard to do, but it turned out, you know, being kind of transcendent, because it was something that we'd finally done, you know. But on the other hand, we kind of were running out of gas with all the personal problems with Lanegan, and all, at the same time, Van had got married at the same time I did to his wife, who's not married to anymore, unfortunately. And you know, we had our own lives, and we were trying to have like actual lives besides the band, because we weren't really, you know, making a living on the band. We were trying to, you know, but we'd have to borrow money from our managers and stuff like that. And Epic was never real like forthcoming, like giving you money to live on or anything. So it's hard, especially when you put out one record in 1992 and expect to like do another record, and it doesn't happen. And that whole time, yeah, it was difficult financially. And, you know, the thing is, before we got on Epic and stuff, it didn't, financially, the only thing we had to do was worry about having enough money to get to the next show. Basically, we were on tour, because, you know, recording wise, we had usually, you know, just the SST would pay for the recording. And, you know, we weren't expecting anything to make money. We just wanted to make records, you know, and that we had enough money to do that. And we always, because we were fortunate enough to have the booking agent we used was associated with SST Global, and they did all, like, you know, Black Flag and a lot of the other SST bands and stuff like that. So they had a real good network built up, and we'd always get paid, because they'd be like, well, if you don't pay the trees, then you're not going to get these other bands, you know. So I think all the years we toured on SST, I remember one time we had trouble getting paid, which was pretty amazing, especially because there was plenty of shows where there was like one guy there, or one time there was a dog. That was the one person in the audience. I remember that. Our t-shirt guy and a dog.
Hey, that might be your best audience sometimes. No.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we always tried to play the same kind of show,
right,
whether there be nobody there or a lot of people. And every once in a while, you know, there was a show where there were a lot of people. And later on, it was more consistent, you know, in the 90s and stuff like that. But yeah, we played plenty of shows where there was nobody there. So anybody starting out, just you gotta play a lot of shows with almost nobody watching you. But maybe it'll work later. I don't know.
Right. You never know who's going to be in that audience too. And besides, if they pay to get in or whatever, you might as well give them their money's worth, even if it's one or two people or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I always felt like we were just, you know, in a lot of ways, just doing it for yourself. I'm not performing to other people, although eventually I guess it kind of did, but, you know, it was like living the dream of being a rock band. And, you know, that was part of it, playing live. So
sure.
When me and my brother Van were kids, like, you know, we were really fortunate to find at the yard sale the MC5 Kick Out the Jams record, like in the mid 70s. Probably was like, you know, 13, 14 years old. And we would, before we even play guitars, we'd like lip sync to it, pretend like we were the MC5, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah. That was, you know, that's what we were doing, but we were doing it for real. Even if there was nobody there, we'd still be doing it like with actual guitars later on. That was, you know, and that kind of like went full circle when finally we played the Paramount Lanegan would always like leave for the encore. Sometimes he'd come back for a song or two, but then, because we never played very long. So Van and me and Barrett would a lot of times do songs without Lanegan. And we did one of the encores for the Paramount show. That was like our first, really our biggest show in Seattle up to the point. It must have been 93 or something. Yeah, 93. And we hadn't rehearsed it or anything. And I don't know, Barrett knew the song, but we did the MC5, the Rocket Reducer, Ramalama Fa Fa Fa. And I kind of knew it, Van kind of knew, but it just like fell together. And I remembered, over the years later, I was like, did that really turn out good, or was it suck or what? But I found a recording of it a few months ago, and I was like, man, I can't believe it. It actually was pretty damn good. And it was like, but that was like, full circle from the old lip syncing the MC5 to actually playing the song like me and Van too without Lanegan.
Yeah.
At the Paramount in front of like 3,000 people or something. So
wow, that's a fantastic story.
Yeah, And you said that the podcast was like about success or something, right?
Yeah.
So that was like one of the most, that was like the pinnacle of our success to me. It's like we living our dream, and that's the whole thing of, what the summing up our entire career to me. It was like, that's what we did. Me and Van, we had a dream of being in a rock band, and not very many people who are in rock bands get that far, and we like got way farther than we ever thought we would. If we would have like stopped at Buzz Factory, like that would have been like, wow, we really, amazing. We like did all this stuff, but instead we took it even farther. And
yeah, it's quite the accomplishment.
Thankful for that. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious now. I've got a couple like really nerdy questions, but when like Lanegan would split at the end, is that how you ended up playing Nearly Lost You with Layne Staley?
Yeah, that was let's see, in Montreal on the 90, was it 92? Yeah, it must have been 92. What happened, that was an interesting one, because I had like we were playing in somewhere in like Northeast a day or two before, and I had like was with my wife, was my girlfriend at the time, and she got sick or something. I had to take her back to her where she lived in New York, and so like we were like something like in Boston area. So I drove back to New York, was to take a plane up to Montreal because that was the next show. So I did that. I got to Montreal, got to the venue, and it's like, Lanegan's in the hospital. I'm like, what? I don't know why he went to. He would go to the hospital, drop a hat, like I remember, like back when we were touring, like when we were SST, he was like, "Where's the closest hospital?" I don't know. Yeah, he went to the hospital a lot. Anyway, he's at the hospital, and this was more on tour with Alice in Chains, and so we're like, I don't know, what are we gonna do? So I think that was the only song we did. We went on and played, and Layne came up and sang Nearly Lost You. We're like, oh, this is cool, And I think that's the only song we played, was just that, because I don't think we played anything else without Mark.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly though, but yeah, so we just opened the show, played Nearly Lost You with Layne, and somebody videotaped it, and now it's like for posterity on YouTube. So yeah, it was kind of cool though. We like Tour of Alice in Chains was cool. I mean, it's because we kind of got a little bit of different audience. I mean, it's hard to realize that Alice in Chains being so nowadays thinking like intricately connected to the whole Seattle scene, but a lot of the bands had different kind of vibes with them. They had we always in the early days, I thought they were more like a metal, like hair metal band, but even though they kind of started out in that vein, they weren't, and I didn't realize that until we played with them live, that they were much more, heavy rock band.
If I would see the Screaming Trees and they were going to play one song, and Lanegan wasn't there, that'd be the one you'd want to hear, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, how do you feel about that song? I mean, that's one that Van wrote, right?
Yeah, he came up with the original like chorus. Like, there's some story I think Mark said in his book, but he had the demo tape of Van singing the chorus or something, and he told Van, "Yeah, that's great. We should work." So he told Van and me, figure out more, write the whole song. So Van had the chorus part and stuff. And I think I got together with him and we worked out like the verses and stuff. But yeah, it was Van's, his idea in the beginning.
Sure.
I always credit it to him. Because it's like, I don't know, it's probably one of my least favorite Tree songs. Maybe it's hard to tell if it's just because we played it so much or if I just, it is different than a lot of our other Tree songs. It's got more of a kind of funky groove to it that was different than what we would usually do. So
yeah. I would think that one would be like difficult on your part to play live, just more so than some of the others because it's the way the guitars are overlaid and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool when we got Josh home in a band. I was finally able to play a lot of the leads. Like on that, like I always just played the the rhythm part because when you just got one guitar player with no play, the rhythm part it kind of empties everything out. And I would always play the rhythm part. But when we got a second guitarist, when we were on Lollapalooza in 1996, I started playing a lot of the leads that I hadn't played before, including that. The Lost You stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys work with so many cool people. Like when we were talking about Dying Days, I was thinking about how Mike McCready was on that.
That's right. Yeah.
How did that come about?
He was just in town, and I guess somebody asked him to come down and play on it. And I didn't. Yeah, on that song, I didn't really have an idea I had never come up with a real solo, so I didn't really know what I was going to do. And they're like, "Oh, let's get McCready to play this." So I thought that was a great idea. It's really cool to have somebody else play because a lot of people when somebody's like, I'm going to do what your instrument is, like on this song or whatever. But I to me, it's like the song has nothing to do with like what I play, they'll do like some of the guitar solos and stuff I've done. But, having somebody add something to it like that is great because it's like the whole song's what I'm more interested in and not just what I'm playing,
Right.
Yeah. Like drummers seem to be like that sometimes. Like I can't hear the fills I did on this part or something.
Yeah. I know. I always thought like with songwriting, I'm a songwriter as well, and it's like you'll always serve the song over anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was great having him. Yeah, I had to learn the solo to play it live because I was like, how do you do it? And I don't know how. He's quite an amazing guitar player. So
you didn't just do your own thing on it live?
I kind of somewhat, but I tried to kind of come close to the idea.
Get the feel of it or whatever. Yeah,
because I really liked it. So
sure. Last Words, when that came out, someone noticed that there was like 12 songs registered and only 10 were on the thing. And I know one of them was like, I think one of them they said was called Strange or something like that.
Yeah.
One left off for some reason.
Yeah, that one was, let's see, Strange it was like a mix of two songs together that I guess that's why we didn't end up using that one. I actually liked it at the time. It was like what two songs were they? I can't remember what two songs they were. There were two older songs that we put together to come up with a new song.
Oh, okay.
And and I liked one of the older songs better. So I don't know. I didn't think about it too much. Then I listened to it later. I was like, that does kind of sound disjointed or whatever. But so I don't know if that'll ever come out or not. Maybe not.
Slip it out on YouTube or something. Maybe.
Yeah, something maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy when you do that kind of stuff.
I was always hesitant to do it until Lanegan's book. After he wrote that book, I was like, I don't really care if you don't like that I let people hear something. If you don't think you're saying good on it, that's tough. I don't know.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I just, because it's one thing releasing stuff on an album and selling it, but it's another thing just like, because I just, it's been so long historically, just like people to be able to hear this stuff because I would like to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
If I like it, I'd like to, I always understand that when like bands, especially when it's been so long, there's that one song the Beatles did. I don't know much of a song. It's like a jam thing called Carnival of Light that they did during, And I never understood why, especially now that there's only like McCartney and Ringo Starr left, like historically, it's more, that's what it is. It's more like a historic document as opposed to like, oh my God, it's a new Beatles song or something.
Right.
And people know what it's like. It's funny because like I remember about 10 years ago, there were people online were talking about it. And there was a bunch of people that did like a fake version of it and tried to pass it off as like, the real one. I was like, well, some interesting things. That'd be cooler just to call it something yourself and release it,
Right.
release it on your own. Why like try to go to all that work and then try just to like make people think it's the Beatles?
And at this point, it's like, why not release? Like, are they just holding on to it as like the last sacred gem or something?
Yeah, I know, because it's probably not even that great. People, it might be interested in that, that's the thing.
Yeah, maybe it's just too built up or something at this point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, another problem with all the unreleased stuff is we don't really have they're mostly just like recordings from cassettes and stuff, or some of them, or I have a few of the cassettes, and a lot of them are just like, I don't know how many. Some of the stuff I've got online, like people have sent me, that are files have probably been through several like generations of cassettes, so the quality isn't that great either. So that's one of the kind of barriers in the way of actually putting out an album of a lot of the unreleased stuff, is we really don't have too many of the tapes. But there's a few things that eventually we might put out, but we'll see.
Yeah, so you don't even have access to those
no, well,
multi-track?
all the as far as I know, all the tapes, except for probably all the Sony stuff, I suppose, is probably in some vault, I hope, somewhere. But all the SST stuff was lost because at some point in the early 90s, like Lanegan decided to get all the tapes from Velvetone, I guess. Some of the stuff that wasn't at Velvetone might be somewhere, because I know Jack and Dino had a few. I think he might have know where the Buzz Factory tapes are. Because he was saying something about that a while back. But anyway, all these tapes got like put in a closet at Susan Silver, who was our first manager, at her office in Seattle. And then a few years later, when we parted ways with her, Lanegan took them, and I guess he had them in his apartment. And at some point, he actually apparently pawned the tapes.
Ooh.
Not sure if that happened or not, but I think he might have got them back. But then they were supposedly in a storage unit, and the storage unit lapsed and got taken away from him. So that who else knows what kind of stuff was in there. Oh yeah, it also what was all there was also Kurt Cobain's old Dodge Dart. That was in there too, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that was in the storage unit too. That's what my brother Van told me.
Someone got a sweet deal on that storage unit.
So those tapes are either just dead, gone, disappeared, or something. The multi-tracks, which kind of sucks, because it would be nice to be able to remix some of that stuff. But,
for sure.
Possibly remastering is a possibility. I don't know how much difference that would make. The stuff was all on 8-track from Velvetone, the stuff we recorded in Ellensburg. And, we did have a master, like down at, was it John Golden? Was that the guy that mastered a lot of stuff what was the name of that place? I can't remember. So it was mastered well, but, maybe years later you could make it sound a little bit different. I mean, the one thing that I wish we could do is like get more drums on Invisible Lantern, which SST album. Everyone says that, but on the other hand, that's the way we wanted it. Me and Mark wanted it that way, because we were like trying to get really loud vocals and really loud guitar both at the same time, and it just sort of suffered. The drums are really great. I mean, it's great drumming on that album. The bass is pretty low too. Maybe you could fix that in the mastering. I don't know.
And there's so many techniques now you can do that just weren't available.
Yeah,
in the 80s and whatnot.
If we ever get our records back from SST, maybe we'll try to do something like that. It's a big if. Yeah.
What are they holding on to him or something, and you can't? Well,
Greg Ginn does that with he's some bands have got their records back. The contracts are just so simple. They didn't really have any time limits on them or anything, but they don't say they don't have any time limits either. So yeah, and it's just they sort of half-assed put the stuff out over the years. They've the SST Superstore still has like a couple things on vinyl, and they have digital stuff. They do have them streaming and stuff, but unfortunately we're not really seeing a lot of money. Over the years SST's paid us on and off, but the last 10 years or so, they've sort of been real quiet about giving us any statements or anything. So it'd be nice if they did. But
speaking of the money aspect, one day I was like sitting around, and my roommate was watching TV, and I heard the song "Look at You" on TV, and they're watching Supernatural, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just wondered, do licensing opportunities like that come along for you a lot, or is it just like...
Not really. That was one of the few I've seen. Yeah, I don't know if for that one, I remember I did see a jump in royalties for that song for that. So we did make some money off of it. But
that's
yeah,
cool.
kind of, yeah, too bad. I don't know. People like movies are really lucrative for bands. Like back, like this nearly last year, I don't know how much we got paid for it, but I remember some other soundtrack. What was that? We got something like $20,000 or $30,000,
Oh, that Darkness or whatever for True Lies.
I think, we got paid some for that. And there was also, there's The River Wild, some movie with Meryl Streep, somebody else. I can't remember. It was Dollar Bill is on it.
Okay.
That's the only movies we've been in as far as I know. But it's kind of be nice if they could still put us in movies.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be opportunity. I mean, if it can get on a show like Supernatural, there's people who still dig it.
Yeah, I saw that, and it's actually on. There's a clip of it on YouTube, and it's really loud for a change. Like a lot of the movies, like that True Lies, the Darkness song. I couldn't even figure out where the song was. I was like, where is the song? I guess maybe it's at the end or something.
Yeah, I think it might be. I barely remember it, but I remember looking for it because I had the soundtrack.
Like,
I was a huge collector.
The song?
You had a Mark Lanegan cover for he did the cover on
Uncle Anesthesia.
Uncle Anesthesia. How did that come about?
I don't know, Susan Silver, our manager, set that up somehow. I don't really know how, but it was interesting. I mean, I don't know. In retrospect, I like it a lot, but some people were like, it's funky, weird. I mean, it's kind of a funny picture. And he tried to like literally take some of the ideas. I mean, I don't know. He probably never heard us before, but I don't know if they probably played him the songs from the record. Obviously, it must have at least shown him the lyrics because it has some of the ideas. But it's kind of funny. I always thought it was funny that the guy is like doing the Vulcan thing, because I was like totally into Star Trek.
Oh, nice.
I didn't have anything connected to Star Trek that I could remember on that record. I don't know. I've probably written something here or there about something about Star Trek.
Wow,
over the years.
You've written a song about Star Trek, or you haven't?
Well, I know one. Well, yeah, one newer one. The song Amoeba Christ, which was on one of my solo albums, was on, what album was that on? Ether Troopers, I think. It's just kind of like loosely about that the Star Trek, the immunity syndrome, where there's a giant virus, like that they go in that area of darkness. And yeah, that was kind of like what I got the idea of that song for. I don't know. I get a lot of ideas from science fiction, because that's like the main thing. The main thing I read and watch is science fiction. I don't know, since I was a little kid. So
sure, I can see where that can kind of lead into psychedelic.
Yeah,
things.
but I was like, back in the 80s, I was getting way into like Philip K. Dick too, which was definitely had a lot to do with a lot of the psychedelic kind of ideas in those songs. Plus, obviously, psychedelic music as well from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And
I mean, like the two new, I guess it's a double album you put out, kind of, right? The two.
Yeah, it was like two records right next to each other. Like they were put out like a few months apart.
Right. Yeah. Those both, I mean, they both scream to me like 60s psychedelic.
Yeah. Well, that's just my main influence. I think I try not to I don't want to do something that sounds exactly like something, like thinking like this sound, like if you heard the song and say, is that an old 60s band? I don't want it really to be like that, but it's just what I'm influenced by. And
yeah.
Music I love, so I can't help but doing stuff like that. So,
I mean, to me, it sounds unmistakably like you, like Older Trees stuff sounds kind of in that vein as well.
Yeah. Because I mean, the Older Tree stuff was really sort of like half influenced by psychedelia and half influenced by punk stuff, because especially live you would really see that in the early days when we because we definitely have this play everything really fast and kind of like trashy. So
the two standout tracks, for some reason, both the end tracks of Revelation and Fuzz, the Colonel Tangerine's Sapphire, that song is fantastic.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
And then Opposite of Christmas, the Rock Slide DK, both those songs are just, I don't know. I was just jamming out to them every time I hear them.
Yeah, I always know kind of what the last song's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Whenever I got a bunch of songs, like this should be the last song.
Right, and it's I feel the same way about Sweet Oblivion with
Julie Paradise. Yeah, that's definitely a lost song.
Yeah, that's how do you choose that? You just figure out.
I don't know. A lot of times it just seems like that should be the right one. I don't know. That's like sort of a characteristic of some songs. They seem like they should be the last song. I don't know. It's a real, like, emotional kind of thing. I get, it's like it's not a reasoning thing. It's more an emotional thing. It's like, this seems like it feels like it should be the last song. So
did you do the track order on the Tree stuff and all that too, or is
that was Mark used to come with the track orders? That was like he hit one of his things. He always decided what the track order was going to be. So
how do you do it on your new albums?
I just go by feel. Like, a lot of times, there's certain ways, like certain types of songs that can lead off. Like there's the kind of slow burner one, something like on Dust, like Halo of Ashes, that's not, or you can have something really fast, and then for some reason over the years, it seems like that I don't go by that anymore, because it's like I'm not doing stuff to be like, released on a major label. But like the second song was like the single on so many, that was like Nearly Lost You and stuff like that. Yeah, most of my track orders like just kind of fall in place, like just in my head. I know Lanegan he'd make tapes of stuff and listen to them next to each other and really agonize over it sometimes. But I just kind of like, things seem like, and the problem is nowadays, of course, is like with the sides, unless you're listening to it on vinyl, you don't really have sides. So I kind of like take that into account. Whereas like it's going to have a side for some people, and some people's not going to have a side. So.
Right. Yeah, that is something to think about. Whenever I put albums together, it's like, I figure out, okay, side A is, these 5 or 6 songs. Side B is this kind of thing. Yeah. And you want it to flow right.
Yeah, I always do that too. But like I said, since a lot of people aren't even, I never, because I don't listen to, I have a lot of vinyl, but I don't really listen to it anymore because it's just easier to not listen to it. It's easier to listen to. I use YouTube a lot and also Spotify I've been using lately. So, but the thing is, like, even with the album though, nowadays, it's really evolved into really not making, for some people, I think for people who are like rock fans like us, probably an album really means a lot. But if you think like the way people listen to music, an album's really, really like not that relevant anymore. It's like the, singles. That's like one thing I think that I may do, like, instead of like worried about like waiting to get all these songs together and doing another record, is I'm probably gonna like start releasing like 1 or 2 songs together, like as singles or something like that, at least for a while, to like make me have to do something a little closer together instead of waiting like a year or 2 in between records. Although the last thing I did was 3 months, I think it was apart. I was like, I recorded that opposite of Christmas, like right on the heels. I finished the one record with no intention of like, doing another one, but then I wrote some songs and I was like, I used to have this idea of like doing a whole record like in one day, like just write the songs and record it all.
Yeah.
But it turned into a couple months, but that's what, I was like, I'm going to finish. And I said, I'm going to like release it on Christmas, or I think I released it on Christmas Eve or something.
Sure.
And I thought of the title because, with the pandemic and everything, it was like the Christmas was coming up, and it was more like the opposite of Christmas. So, and it's not a Christmas. And some people probably think it's a Christmas record. It could be, but it's not. It was released on Christmas, and so.
Yeah, that was my first impression. I thought, oh, he released a Christmas album, I'm gonna check it out. But
I figured people would think that, but if you listen to it, it's not, because Christmas albums are always specific and kind of like, people only want to listen to them at Christmas. So you could listen to this any time of year.
Are you playing every instrument then on these?
The drums are all drum samples. It's a program called Addictive Drums. And I mean, it's amazing. Like, that's like one of the reasons I think that I've been able to do stuff over the last 10 years is because I caught up with the technology. It's like I'm able to do something on my computer by myself, like I used to on a 4-track that actually sounds like an album, like a whole band, And sometimes I kind of like wish, I had some stuff I'm working on that may have like Jack and Dino played some drums on some stuff I was doing that I may release this year sometime.
Cool.
But I could listen to it, it's like, it doesn't really sound that much different than the drum machine. It's not a drum machine. It's a, I use a combination of a step sequencer and addictive drums, which is all like samples of the drums and different kind of kits and everything.
Right, and it plays at like human velocities and stuff like that, where it changes it up a bit.
Pretty much. Yeah, you can change it up and stuff and make it sound like, but so I do that. And with the keyboards, it's the same thing. I have like samples of like Mellotrons, like a thing called the G-Force. Is it G-Force? M-Tron. Yeah, the company's G-Force called M-Tron Pro, and it like has like they go through and like sample all these old Mellotron tapes and stuff, which especially like a real Mellotron's just a pain. I've only played one once, but I've read how as soon as like synthesizers came along in the late 70s, started sounding a little better. I know like people like Rick Wakeman like started using not using Mellotrons because they're such a pain in the ass to like keep up and stuff, because it's like this thing with like all these tape loops in it, and they can screw up so easily. They're just like, it's like having like a whole bunch of tape machines like in a box and getting them all to work, and that's only for one sound. You have to change the whole thing out and to get a different sound. So, yeah, they actually make a box now. It's like a keyboard that has like it looks like an old Mellotron, except for it's just like this thin instead of like, and it just has basically what I use, the software.
Oh, okay. So it's not tape. It's not like they figured out.
No, it's not tape. Yeah. Having to make something like that again, I don't know if they'd even be able to do that, because it's like,
Yeah. The charm of the Mellotron though is like, since it's analog and it's tape, it's going to be different, a little bit different every time, give it some more character and stuff.
Yeah. The thing I used, like, the M-Tron, it has like, since our tape is recorded from the tape loops, like they take each note and they record it, and so you can only play it, I think it's 8 or 16 seconds, and it runs out just like the real one. So
interesting. Hey, that reminds me of a question I want to ask on Sweet Oblivion. There's organ on there, or some kind of Hammond or something, and there's no credit for who played that or anything that I saw on the album. So I'm curious if you did that, or
I think I did. Yeah, because I remember we did overdubs. We did most of the album at a place called Baby Monster in New York, and then later we did a few overdubs at a place Sear Sound, which is the guy who owned the studio. Walter Sear is kind of a famous recording guy. It was really cool recording there. He had all sorts of weird old keyboards and stuff. He had a electric harpsichord that's like on Winter Song. That's like combined with the guitar and the electric harpsichord. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's actually, and he had like a nice Hammond organ. I think I must have played that on I Nearly Lost You. There's like a kind of pad note on the choruses, and on Butterfly, I think there's some organ and maybe a little piano. Yeah, there's not very many keyboards on that album, but there are a few, and that's where we did them all. I'm pretty sure I played everything on keyboard on that thing.
That's awesome. I really like the key parts on Butterfly, like just the little right after the chorus is like that little interlude of keyboards.
Oh yeah,
I like that.
I'm sure that must have been me, because they didn't have any other keyboard players, and I was the one who usually did it. Well, in the early days, Steve Fisk played a lot of the keyboards, and I played some of the keyboards. And the funny thing was that, like, they had the Northwest Music Awards or something like that, and I got nominated. I didn't win it for Keyboardist of the Year or something. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. But like Steve Fisk probably played half the keyboard parts. I mean, he was the one that actually sounded like, well, like on the first album, Clairvoyance, especially that one, and like on Other Worlds and like the Turning, where it sounds like someone actually knows how to play keyboards. That was Steve, because he's a great keyboard player. And I just kind of like can kind of do one hand if I punch in, sort of.
It's so funny to hear that first EP and like and then the last words, because like when I first got into you guys in '92 or whatever, I went back and found that first album. It does not sound like Mark Lanegan singing.
No, see, he never his main singing experience before that was singing at a party with the band Maggot Mina was the guy's name, guitar player, his band at parties. So he didn't really, and we weren't really we didn't know what we were doing when we started the band. It was like we were just doing covers, that's what our bands with Van and me and Mark Pickerel before this, we'd done covers and played a few shows like dances, like a high school dance and a couple other things like that. So, he just got together for fun to, do that. But what happened was, I had just got a 4-track a few months before I've been way into writing poetry when I was in my early 20s. And I really never could make the connection into writing songs until I got a little a Fostex X15 4-track cassette recorder and started writing some stuff right about that time. And Mark Lanegan listened to some of them. He's like, man, we should do some of these with this band. And that's how the Screaming Trees started, and just right away after that was when we, he didn't know how to sing hardly at all. He was just like, okay, sing. And I'm like, okay, this is fine. I couldn't sing any better than him. So, but he sort of realized after we were recording, so we never played live until after Clairvoyance was done. But while we were working on the Clairvoyance record, he realized that he had an actual voice somehow. It came out of, I don't know if it came out of nowhere, but he's just like, people. And by the time we started playing some shows and stuff, people were like, that guy can actually sing really good. He got a great rock voice. I mean, he's still like one of my favorite all-time singers. And to have him sang all the songs I wrote and stuff, it's like an honor. It's just like, I love to hear him sing still. I like a lot of his solo stuff. I mean, he does so much weird collaboration. It's hard to keep up with all of it. But
yeah.
I think he's collaborated. I bet he's collaborated with more people than any other artist in the whole world, it seems like sometimes.
It's interesting because I think just hearing like you sing and him, you guys got kind of similar sounds.
He kind of taught each other to sing, really. I mean, he's learned to sing in my songs, and he listened to my my demos and stuff in order, and then on the other hand, some of my early stuff, I was like way into trying to sound like Sky Saxon or Rocky Erickson. I didn't really have the, I had maybe the upper kind of range to do it, but the lower part, and some of them were almost embarrassingly bad, like Billy. Billy Corrigan does that, and it's really irritating. He seemed to do it more over the years. I definitely did it way less. When I finally realized I should stop doing that, I think I finally realized I could sing all right, at least enough to not be embarrassing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was one of the differences in his voice. But yeah, he'd hear something that I sang, and he could have, singing on the record. So, and then on the other hand, I was hearing him sing my song. So kind of, eventually, his voice is about a million times better than mine, but, I'm passable. At least I can,
yeah,
I was able to sing my songs well enough that I like the way it turns out. So
for sure. Like when I listen to, let's say you do like an old Tree song on YouTube where you're playing acoustic or whatever, it sounds fantastic. It sounds like you were meant to be singing it, obviously, because you wrote it, probably.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's weird because like back then I never sat down and played my songs on an acoustic guitar. So it wasn't until I played a few shows in the late 90s, doing that. And so I didn't, I was like, maybe I could do this actually. I play these songs that I wrote with the acoustic guitar. So I've done a lot more the last 3 or 4 years. So.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about going out and doing an acoustic set, when COVID's done and all that?
Yeah, I've thought about it. Maybe, I don't know. I just, I'm a real hermit. I don't like to leave home unless I have to. So maybe, I wouldn't. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but I might. I'm probably more likely to do stuff on, streaming stuff. Maybe.
Sure. I'm really into mixing and stuff. I've worked with a couple people, and Andy Wallace mixed Sweet Oblivion, and I just wondered, do you get input on that? Like when he's mixing, are you able to be there with him?
I never, myself, I wouldn't, but Flanagan would be around some for the mixing. I don't know if he was around much for the Andy Wallace on that one. I wasn't there at all. I was just I always hated mixing myself, and like when I came time to like mix stuff myself that I'd done, I finally got not too bad at it. Like after the last couple of records that I did, it was really scary because I was, when I like mixed like my first couple things I did, and I had one of them I had Jack and Dino mixed, and so I was like glad about that because I didn't have to mess with it. But like so with Andy Wallace, I just like disappeared, and I can't remember where I was when he did Sweet Oblivion. He did Dust too, but I remember we were around during that, and he was just like, I don't know what he did, but I love his mixes. I mean, some people think they sound really commercial or stuff, but to me, it's like they sound big but good, everything's in its place. I'm not sure what he did, but he was quite the amazing mixer, I thought.
Yeah, me too. He's one of my favorite.
Yeah, so
everything sounds like well, you can just hear everything. You can, if you want to hear the drums, they're there.
I know, and it all sounds nice and big. I think that's probably of all our major label records. We had 2 of them mixed by him, and the third one, Uncle Anesthesia, was mixed by Terry Date, who was the engineer. And I think that's the one record probably would be nice to remix, and the tapes probably are somewhere since it was on Epic, because it seems, I don't know why that record seems smaller or something. I don't know if it's more compressed or what it is, but it just didn't quite have it doesn't have the big sound as much as Sweet Oblivion and Dust.
Yeah, it still sounds really good.
You probably have to turn it up to get it to sound good.
Maybe.
Sure.
Speaking of that album, you guys worked with Chris Cornell on that. Was he a big influence on it, or was he just kind of around for a few things?
He was around. He probably made some difference. I mean, the reason we did that was because, Epic, they want a producer who or they know, they know the name, and he'd done Soundgarden and some other stuff, but mostly metal stuff. So we're like, well, maybe we should have a Chris who, was Susan Silver was our manager, his wife and manager.
Right.
A former one. And so we were like, well, maybe he could act as a liaison between, who knows what our band's like, and Terry Date, who didn't know what our band's like, but he was good. Yeah, it was, he wasn't there during the mixing because he had to go on tour with Soundgarden, but it was fun having him around. He was there for most of the stuff. And he like, on my Rat distortion pedal, he drew little, what do you call it, talisman symbols or something. They faded off over the years, and I sold it. I probably should have waited. I could have sold it for but they probably were worn off because they were in grease pen or something.
Oh, yeah.
I could have sold it for a lot of money, but yeah. It was cool having them around. They played a lot of basketball. I didn't play basketball, but everyone else played basketball because at London Bridge they had a basketball hoop. That was the studio we worked at. You
mentioned Lanegan's book, and Lanegan talks about Cornell a little bit in there, where it's saying this weird thing is just sticking in my mind about it. Did you read Lanegan's book at all? Or I know there was a weird thing.
Just parts of it. I had never read the whole thing, but I've heard a lot of what's in it. Yeah. There
was a thing where he talked about Cornell was sick, so they spit in each other's eyes to see if they could to test a theory about getting sick through the eyeballs.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. It made me think, well, was the whole sessions like that? Just crazy, weird stuff like that?
Yeah, no, it was pretty tame. There was, like I said, there was a lot of people playing basketball, Mark and Chris and Van. That's cool.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, are there any questions that maybe I should have asked but I didn't? Anything you want to talk about?
I don't know. Nowadays, a lot of people my age like to say rock music is dead and stuff like that. I don't think that at all. They go out and listen. There's tons of new rock music I like a lot. I like what the bands are like right now, the OCs or OCs or what they're called now. Them. They're great. They're one of my favorite bands. They're about 3 years ago, I started realizing that everything I listened to was probably before 1970, and I better do something about it. Although I love stuff from all, especially 70s and 80s stuff and some 90s stuff, but I so I started trying to find stuff that was newer that I liked. And the first band I started getting into was King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, and they're from Australia. They're a really big following, and you know, they're younger. They're probably in the early 30s. And from them, I started listening to a lot of, you know, stuff that had been recorded in the last 10 years and found out that there's actually a lot of really great rock music. It's not on the top 40. Don't go in the top 40, always sucks anyway. But on the other hand, like popular music seems to have got really quiet. I don't know if you noticed that, like all the stuff is like synthesizers, people whispering vocals, stuff like that. I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe on the other hand, though, some bands, you see the Eurovision contest, you know, this rock band just won Eurovision, and they're like kind of grungy, kind of metalish. Called Maneskin, I think it's their name. They're Italian, and their songs in Italian, so it's a little odd. But yeah, that was kind of inspiring. At least like that a band that's an actual rock band would win something like that. I don't know.
That is cool.
You know, the bands over the year, like the really famous bands that won Eurovision. The most famous was ABBA, way back in the 70s. You know, so they don't have a real good record for great bands, but they're kind of interesting. But anyway, so yeah, I don't think rock music's dead. It's just become like a niche. It's a genre, like, you know, like jazz or something. And there's, you know, I don't know, there's probably a lot of great jazz bands, but I'm not into jazz, so I don't try to find them, you know.
Right.
But plus, with the internet, I mean, it's really democratized music, and unfortunately it's also destroyed the music industry too. Maybe that's fortunate though in the long run, I don't know, because the music industry just sort of like tends to like chew up bands and spit them out, you know. So.
Sure. I think there's a real chance for anybody to be heard now.
Yeah, I think that's great, and that's why, you know, I'm happy to do what I'm doing now, because I can just put out stuff that I like and a few people can hear it, and that's all I really want to do, you know.
Yeah.
Because you know, the main reason I do it is because I like to do it, and I don't want to be doing it because somebody else wants me to do it, which was like I talked about before about becoming a job. So.
Very cool. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this with me.
It's fun talking.
It's been great, man. It's been really great, and I wish you the best on all your projects. And
thank you.
Yeah. So
yeah, look for more stuff coming out before too long. I got songs written, but I haven't recorded them yet, so.
All right. Well, this will go on YouTube and stuff. I'll link all that. I'll link your stuff. And
okay. Yeah, great.
Cool.
That was great.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Have a good day, man.
You too. Take care.
Take it easy.